What's up, viewers, subscribers, and agents alike? It's your boy Enlightened Luciferian Prince coming at y'all once again. I want to talk about a little bit more on the subject of what I elaborated on in my previous video about the indigenous people and some of the things that have been done historically in this country to otherwise, totally subtract from the status of indigenous people and to otherwise rename and or relocate and displace and disenfranchise those people who are considered indigenous people. And I'm doing it from a very historical standpoint, so to speak. I'm not doing it from a biased standpoint. I'm doing it from a historical standpoint, but then you have to also understand that, yes, certain things that I may say may come across as particularly a little bit sharp, which is perfectly fine, is what it is. I'm grown, I can say what I want. But this is your first time viewing this channel, go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe. Make sure you hit the bell, the notification. That way, every time I upload a video, you'll be informed about the content in which I actually wish to disseminate amongst a lot of people in my YouTube community. Now, what I want to talk about today is the $5 Indians. Yes, people, I know that most people have researched these things. I know that most people have looked these things up. I know most people have pretty much did their due diligence or their research on the subject, and they have been misled based upon two notions. See, when you have history, you have accurate history, and then you have what's called revisionist history. Revisionist history is history that has been revised based upon the preconceived notion that people with specific intent, the opposition of the truth, will take these stories and these instances, I should say, in history, and either fictionalize them or turn them into storyhood, and actually disseminate this information amongst the populace of people to keep them unawares of the agenda of what was done in the past, because you have to realize history is very important. What was done yesterday impacts today, and what's done today impacts tomorrow. So they know that. So by them redefining history from a revisionist approach, then you have to take into strict consideration that nothing happens by accident when it comes down to teaching information. Now, accurate history is one of those things that you don't have to argue it. It's very evident, and it's very lucid as far as the composition of it is concerned, and you don't have to do anything against it before it. It just simply is. And I noticed that in this country called the United States Incorporated, the public full system, the most general, most poorest sort of education you could ever receive, has disinformed and misinformed a lot of people about cultures and about their culture and about their heritage and about their legacy. And it has broken down a lot of people into subcategories, sort of like a crayon box, such as colors. That is a construct. See, when you have a culture, when you have a legacy, when you have something you could tie yourself to that is actually standing in history, then the narrative that the opposition gives in regards to you should never supplant what is actually pre-existent, because what's pre-existent, it stands before that which comes later. It's supreme. But because we live in, yes, people, a racist society that wishes to superimpose a few people over the many of others and totally disregard their particular accomplishments in society, now we have to realize we have to work 10 times as hard to ensure that these things are not forgotten from the annals of legacy, and these are not forgotten from the annals of time within regards to who we are as people. Because once your identity is stolen, we're not talking about no social security identity. We're talking about your actual cultural identity is stolen. You have no point of reference. And as long as you have no point of reference, you will be led by the nose, such as a bull, when they put a ring in its nose, to lead it upon any which way they wish for it to go. So remember, the most number one primary ingredient to any endeavor in life, if you want to move properly educated, is proper historical education. Let's get to it. Let's talk about something that happened prior to the $5 Indian, fraud that was perpetuated upon the American populace, but we'll get there later. This was over 125 years ago. But we're going to talk about something. It's called the Indian Removal Act. This happened first. The Indian Removal Act was signed into law May 28th, 1830. Peculiar that it was just this month, right? By United States President Andrew Jackson. the law authorizing the president to negotiate with Southern Native American tribes for their removal to federal territory west of the Mississippi River in exchange for white settlement of their ancestral lands. Notice what that word, they use that word, negotiate. See, when that word is actually, impinged upon you, amongst your conscience, it makes it seem like it was a peaceful negotiation, such as we came down to talk to those people who resided in the Cherokee jurisdiction, also known as Georgia, which is still the Cherokee jurisdiction, but they call it Georgia because that's the colonist ideology that they wish to supplant upon the whole 13 states of the Union and colonization, but we'll get there later. But long story short, it's still the Cherokee jurisdiction, period. Don't care what no one says. Native title is superior to the corporate charter, which is called the Constitution. So it's still the Cherokee jurisdiction. But there wasn't no negotiation. Like, they came down here and peacefully told people. This is also a historical incident where we also know it's called the March of Tears, where many of the people who were actually in the Cherokee jurisdiction were marched out west. And now we're talking about force. We're not talking about willingly saying that these people particularly chose this path. We're talking about a particular indigenous group of sovereign people who were actually, dispossessed from their territory and their ancestral lands, all for the point in intention for, supremacists, white supremacists, to basically steal their land. That's what it was. But in order to alleviate their conscience, they had to put it in law and justification. And I said it in my previous videos before, the word just, according to legal definition, if you look in Black's Law Dictionary, means man's law. That means whatever a man has to do to alleviate his conscience, to make it seem like what he's doing is right, is what he's going to put on black and white. That doesn't make it right. That just alleviates the consciousness of what they're doing to try to give it some sense of legal jurisprudence. It's bullshit. It is the number one thing that a lot of people get confused in this country. Just because something's written down in black and white does not make it supreme. Many oral traditions that were passed down from the indigenous people were never written down on paper. They were passed down traditionally. But we're going to get there when we get to this Dawes Rolls. And I'm going to show y'all something on how these people have played this game for centuries. Let's go further. If you doubt what I'm saying, you can look this up. It's originally published May 28th, 1830. Public Law 21-148. And enacted by the 21st United States Congress. Statutes at large, Statute 411. And you could also search for the Indian Removal Act, and it hasn't been amended. Now, I'll leave it in the video description. Now, let's get to it. What people don't also, they have to understand that just because a person says that they're Native American does not mean that they are indigenous people. I noticed that the United States over, there's a lot of people who are of Caucasian descent. Yes, and I'm saying it for what it's worth because this is the truth. Who swear that they are indigenous. Just because your name is equivocated on a Dawes roll does not mean that you are actually bloodline related to indigenous people. Let me say that one more time. Just because your forebear's name, which is your surname, may be on the Dawes roll does not mean you are related blood-wise by indigenous harmony. So miss me with that. You follow what I'm saying? Miss me with that. Miss me with that. I don't care what no one says. It doesn't matter if you are 1/16. That's nothing. That only means that your great-great-great-great-grandparent had some sort of ancestral chemistry. That doesn't mean that you are officiate. Most tribes, out of 566 of them is recognized in the United States, require you to have 25% or more indigenous blood in you. Not 1/16. That just gets you in the door for purposes of actually acquiring something for material gain, to get the benefits of it. And I'm going to go further into it and show y'all something. Paying to play Indian. This comes from an excerpt, one of my favorite newspapers I read all the time, a digital newspaper. It comes from Indian Country Today. It's digital indigenous news. Good source of information, trustful. Now, the article is called, again, Paying to Play Indian. The Dawes Roll and the Legacy of the $5 Indians. Now, this is an article written by Alyssa Landry. This is updated September 13, 2018. And All rights reserved to the creator of the content. I'm just using this as reference to just give you a general sense that once you go and embark upon your own study, you can do your own due diligence to see exactly what I'm saying is true. There's many books written on this. You can search, you can peruse libraries. There's books ad infinitum on this subject. So you can do your own research, and I suggest you add some of these books to your library because as time goes on, a lot of pertinent information within regards to certain subjects might just happenstance disappear. So get you some information, get you some literature on this stuff, man. But anyway, let's go. Paying a commissioner $5 could get an opportunistic white person on the Dawes Roll 125 years ago, which it still causes problems for tribes to this day. It may be fashionable to play Indian now, but it was already trendy 125 years ago, as of 2018. When people paid $5 a piece for falsified documents declaring them native on the Dawes Rolls. What did I just say? Let's say it one more time. When people paid $5 a piece for falsified documentations declaring them natives on the Dawes Roll. These so-called $5 Indians paid government agents under the table in order to reap the benefits that came along with having Indian blood. They didn't say we're Indian. It said reap the benefits. You see what I'm saying? They're not indigenous, just to reap the benefits. Mainly white men with an appetite for land. $5 Indians paid to register on the Dawes Rolls, earning fraudulent enrollment in tribes along with benefits inherited for generations to come. These were opportunistic white men who wanted access to land or food rations, said Gregory Smithers, associate professor of history at Virginia Commonwealth University. These were people who were more than happy to exploit the Dawes Commission, and government agents for $5 were willing to turn a blind eye to the graft and corruption. The Dawes Commission, established in 1893 to enforce the General Allotment Act of 1887, or the Dawes Act, was charged with convincing tribes to cede their land, which means to give up, to the United States and divide remaining land into individual allotments, which is what we call reservations to this day. The commission also required Indians to claim membership in only one tribe and register on the Dawes Rolls what the government meant to be a definitive record of individuals with Indian blood. The Curtis Act, passed in 1898, targeted the 5 civilized tribes. Well, this is just, we're gonna skate on thin ice with that one right there. You know what I'm saying? Which was Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, and Seminole, forcing them to accept allotments and register to the Dawes Rolls. The 2 acts, which came during a period of, quote, murky social context after the Civil War, when white and black men were intermarrying with Native American women. Well, we'll get there later on the subject that actually was people of color actually dealing with other people of color. It wasn't the same as the opposite end of the spectrum. Aimed to help the government keep track of real Indians, notice real Indians, while accelerating efforts to assimilate Indian people into white culture. Smithers said, by 1865, African Americans and white Americans were moving into the Midwest, into the Indiana and Oklahoma territories, all vying for some patch of land they could call their own and live out their Jeffersonian views of independence. But the thing that they try to do is intersperse us with the ideology of the supremacy that these people try to perpetuate. We had nothing to do with it. We were already here. So miss me with that bullshit. We were already here. You see what I'm saying? We were just going out west to go to territory that we had already had some type of native title to anyway. We didn't come here like Europeans. They came as vagabonds. That's the truth. They didn't have anything. They superimposed a system based upon colonial precedent by other powers of Europe in order for them to establish themselves as country. But we were already here. You know, I would debate anybody on that subject. And please, leave your emotions aside and bring the facts. We've already been here. So don't try to make it seem as if, I hate when I read articles and certain editorials on certain things when they try to make it seem like we were in some sort of competition. We don't have to compete with something that we were parents of this shit. We were already here. So we weren't sitting here trying to have a rat race, you know what I'm saying, with the vagabond. We weren't doing that. We were already here by native title. But anyway, let's go. The Dawes Commission set up tents in Indian Territory. The Dawes Commission, said Bill Welch, Director Emeritus of the Oklahoma Historical Society's Office of American Indian Culture and Preservation. Their field clerks scoured written records, took oral testimony, and generated enrollment cards for individuals determined to have native blood. That included authentic Indians, where it said, but it also included lots of people with questionable heritage. Commissioners took advantage of their positions and enrolled people who had minimal or questionable connection to the tribe. Minimal or questionable. Not legit, minimal or questionable. They were not adverse to taking money under the table. Now, if you would like a piece of literature on this, please get a pen and paper. It's called the Index to the Final Rolls of Citizens and Freedmen of the 5 Civilized Tribes in Indian Territory, prepared by the Commission and Commissioner to the 5 Civilized Tribes and approved by the Secretary of the Interior. This is compiled under authority conferred by the Acts of Congress, approved June 21st, 1906, 34 Statutes at Large, 325. Now, the implications of such shady practices are enormous now. Smith has said, $5 Indians pass their unearned benefits to heirs who still lay claim to tribal citizenship and associated privileges. Now we have people who are white, but who can trace their names back to the rolls used by tribal nations to ascertain who has rights as citizens. He said, that means we have white people who have the ability to vote at large, which means political rights. It means the potential to influence tribal policy on a whole range of issues. It means people have access to healthcare, education, and employment. The implications are quite profound for people who got away with fraud. On the flip side, while non-natives paid to play Indian, many authentic Indians who didn't trust the government chose not to register with the Dawes Rolls at all, said Green Norris, a genealogist at the Cherokee National Historical Society. That means people with legitimate claims to tribal enrollment and the benefits are now excluded. Wow. Native Americans are the only racial group defined by blood, Norris said. Even that was arbitrary. In the 1890s, siblings who talked to different commissioners emerged with different blood quantum. Because they didn't apply together, some of them have different blood degrees. In short, the Dawes Roll forever changed the way the federal government defined Indians, and in many cases, the way Indians still define themselves to this very day. In 1900, one woman registered on the rolls with 1/256th Cherokee blood. The woman said, now some enrolled members of the Cherokee Nation have as little as 8,196% Indian blood. Damn! The Dawes Rolls even now are a murky and very inaccurate gauge of Indian citizenship. In the 2000 census, the number of people claiming Cherokee ancestry was 3 times that of the official tribal enrollment. That's what happens when the federal government established the rules, not the natives. He said, Smithers has no estimate of the number of people who fraudulently registered on the Dawes Rolls or who lay false claim to Indian citizenship right now. But $5 Indians did not represent an isolated case of appropriation. What we had was simply white people claiming to be Indian. He said, they were early wannabes, just like we have today. $5 Indian is just another term for that. And I rest my case. You see, people, whenever you let the government dictate to who you are, this is what you wind up with. Out of 566 tribes, they declare only 5 of them civilized. Well, what is civilized according to the English definition? Because from what I see, they call civilized society, and what we call today ain't civilized worth a fuck, according to the popular definition of what it actually is supposed to be, but it's not. This is the biggest fraud perpetuated against the indigenous people in this country. And now you individuals wonder why I say what I say when I say on my channel, that you have to stop asking a broken system for the problems to be fixed on behalf of themselves when they create them at all the angles. You got a bunch of people walking around on these reservations, inhabiting these reservations. I just came from Cherokee, North Carolina, hell, a couple months ago. And I'm telling you, I seen it with my own 3 eyes. People up there still to this day posturing as if they have a right to indigenous land. To this day. To this very day. Now you have isolated, for good reason, you have very isolated, or organizations of people who basically keep themselves to themselves for good reason, lest the adulteration comes in from the outside invading forces, i.e. the colonizer. Because whether the colonizer came in, these little funny looking shoes, these funny looking hats yesteryear, they'll come to you today in a suit. They'll come to you today in a jogging suit. For all that matter, they want what these people have. They want what the indigenous people had. See, when you go back in history, you understand that the indigenous people didn't own land. They shared it equally. They only divided it in territories due to the specific notion of that tribal inheritance for that particular parcel of land. But it wasn't owned by anybody. See, when the first colonizers came, they came with the specific intent to take. Period. You're not using it? Oh, well, even though they were using it, it was being irrigated. It was all free and clear because, that's just the way that the indigenous people believe. It's just here. It's for everybody. Not when the greedy goddamn colonizer comes in with a specific intent to have taxes and tributes paid to foreign entities who didn't have shit in their land, but decided to come to the land, of plenty. And totally monopolize it. Why don't y'all see that same thing happening today, especially in urban neighborhoods with gentrification and so forth and so on? Why do y'all not see this shit? It's the same thing. It's the same thing. People wanting to tell other people what to do with something that don't belong to them. That's America. You see what I'm saying? Period. That's the fucking truth. This shit does not belong to anybody. But under the pretenses that a corporate charter they superimpose upon indigenous people, they believe they own it. That's true. It's just a belief. It's not reality. It's just because I believe I own it. Most dangerous concept in the world is self-deceit. You see what I'm saying? And then not to mention, they're telling you where you can go, where you can shop, where you can live, how you can live, where you can live. And please don't be of anyone of Negro or colored descent. You're really going to get the short end of the stick. Not to mention that most of the indigenous people who actually inhabited this land were people of color. We're the children who inherited the soil. However, because we have been displaced through education, through systematic indifference, through racial practices embedded and structured within the system, and have also been cheated by having our identity and our culture stolen from us, we're in a very bad place. You know what I'm saying? Very bad place socially as a whole. This is a proven fact. But this doesn't come from my bias or my opinion. This comes from historical precedent. See, I bring receipts. This is what they've done, and they're still doing it to this day. Why do you think that most indigenous tribes who live on reservations live below the poverty level? Now, don't get me wrong. There are some tribes that are pretty wealthy. Pretty wealthy. When they get their earnings off of, casino earnings. And, government can't touch that. They're pissed. They would love to, but they can't. You know what I'm saying? They would love to. They would love to have it, but they can't. Some tribes actually receive up to $80,000 a month. Maybe like what? It's like what? $1.6 million a year, and they don't get taxed. So they see in all of that. Some get up to $1,000. I think if it's Cherokee, whatever. However, people, if you wish to find out exactly by blood, not by documentation, who you really are, by blood, please. I know a lot of people have these qualms about genetic testing. Let me tell you something. That's the only way you're going to get the facts. See, DNA don't lie. See, paperwork lies, as we can see. The Dawes Rolls, it's fraudulent. Don't even try going that road if you're trying to find your ancestral lineage. It's a waste of time. It is a complete waste because it has been totally convoluted and screwed since the beginning. Do genetic testing. Serious. Get to the bottom of it. You know what I'm saying? Do your due diligence. Don't let someone else dictate to you who you are and what you are. Once you actually figure that out for yourself, you'll know exactly who you are and what people can't tell you who they are. Let me get me a little snack right quick. A little chamoy on pineapple real quick. Serious, people. I don't know why people don't want to actually be self-determined. And that's one of the reasons why I get so pissed off when people always talk about, this Asian hate crime bill. And all. Fuck them bills, okay? Get out of the illusion. It's not going to happen. Because the reason why 3 things will never happen in this country is because if they ever happen, they will have to tell you the truth about it. Reparations, social equality, and actual civil rights that are functional that you can use at your disposal. Hell, they didn't make an anti-lynching bill for Emmett Till till what? 2020? Man died in the 50s, if I ain't correct, if I ain't mistaken. Think about it, people. That was well over half a century ago. But let me go ahead and snack on my little pineapple with a little tahini and chamoy on it. Reading that article gave me a sour taste in my mouth. Telling y'all. I'll knock it till you try it. It's good. Serious. When are we going to stop letting people play around with our determination of our future? When? You going to let somebody else tell us who we are? I think that's what we're doing as a whole. As an individual person, I think you need to start self-actualizing. Stop letting other people dictate who you are. And stop putting black and Negro on applications and start putting native. Because that's what you are. You know what I'm saying? Stop putting that shit down on paperwork because that shit has a negative connotation attached to it and it will never be positive. It was created that way to be negative. Stop putting that shit on your credit card applications, your housing applications. Stop putting that shit on everything. Stop. Just stop using it. Stop putting U.S. citizen. There's no such thing as U.S. citizenship. You are a state citizen in the state in which you were born. You're not a U.S. citizen. Period. That's a lie. And these are the constructs that we placed ourselves into and has gotten us what? Nothing. There's no such thing as U.S. citizenship. It's an illusion. It gives you a guise of protections that aren't protections at all. And it gives you no benefits or no entitlement to actually be mobile and actually be self-determinant in your own right. None. I'm a U.S. citizen. Man, fuck that. All you're saying is I'm a taxpayer and I'm a slave. That's all you're saying. That's all you're really fucking saying. Ain't saying nothing else to the beast. They know already. They constructed the definitions to be attached to personalities of people who didn't know any better. Because remember, before you actually came to adulthood and you actually actualized, you believed that to the day. Some of y'all believe it to the day right now. Just being real. But to each his own. It is what it is. Y'all stay tuned for more heat. I'm going to keep dropping the knowledge and keep it coming. Like I said, first time viewing this channel, like and subscribe. It is what it is. You got what I got to say? Great. You don't? Fantastic. That's not going to stop me from doing what I got to do. I'm going to keep doing what I got to do regardless, irrespective of what a person thinks or says. At least I come with facts, not emotion. Stay tuned. Peace, light, love. Y'all keep it real with yourselves, man. Like I said, genetic testing is the only accurate way that you're actually going to get some sort of semblance of who you really are. Because again, natives are defined by blood, not title.